Everybody forgot about McWilliams. But quietly, he might just be winning the fourth outside cornerback job.
I feel like I gained a couple steps. I done put on a few more pounds, dropping body fat down. So, yes, and I'm feeling great.
Where do you feel you've grown your game the most?
I'll probably say mental-wise. I already, they drafted me, so I already had the ability to come out here and play football at the end of the day. But, it's a very mental state when you're coming out here playing at the highest level. So, just getting in the playbook and, just getting down the scheme. I would say the biggest.
And when you look at what he's been doing in camp, there's a legitimate argument that he's much closer to the 53-man roster than many people realize. But in order to win that fourth outside cornerback spot, he's going to have to prove that he can do one thing with consistency. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to our conversation about the outside cornerback depth chart and the fact that the last time we talked about Ambry Thomas, a guy that's a little unknown, a guy that's got a lot of actual experience playing. He's got a couple years in it, and at one point in time was a fairly, highly sought-after prospect coming out of the draft. But today I want to turn to a homegrown talent, a guy that we selected ourselves here with the Philadelphia Eagles, a young man that's a little undersized, to be quite honest, but he plays so much bigger than what his size is recorded. One thing that has stood out to me from watching last year's tape and into what I've heard reported from, training camp this season is just how comfortable McWilliams is playing outside as a cornerback. And that's where this thing gets interesting, because we're not talking about McWilliams necessarily having to become a starter for the Philadelphia Eagles. What we're really discussing today is one specific trait, and that trait is versatility. Specifically, inside-outside versatility. The ability to not only impact the roster by being able to fill in as a fourth outside corner, but in case of a break in emergency situation to where we're playing a little bit of a roster tango and trying to get things lined up and made to make sense between players such as, Cooper DeJean, and then you got, people like Michael Carter II and Gush. A guy like Jonathan Joseph and a guy like McWilliams can also help you out with having that inside-outside versatility to their play. With that said, there is a reason why I have not called him a roster lock. If you guys have caught that so far in my language, you haven't heard the word roster lock come out of my mouth, because I think there is one slight complication here that's causing me to say I think his probability has increased since camp started, but I don't know where it's ultimately going to lie. Truth be told, he's a little similar to Jonathan Joseph. They're very, very similar players. And if we were to put Jonathan Joseph and McWilliams as our third outside corner and our fourth outside corner, there would be a little bit of concern about the fact that our backups, there's not a lot of length from that cornerback room. And the other reason I've been hesitant is while I think McWilliams can actually be a pretty productive special teams player for the Philadelphia Eagles, and I think that's true whether or not he's retained on the practice squad or, and we're utilizing him as a call-up, or if he's on the actual active 53-man roster, active 46 for game day, if you will. No matter how you shake it, I definitely think he can impact your special teams. However, Kaylee Ringo is a gunner. And a gunner is something that's going to take precedent over a special, a regular special teams contributor. It's one of those specialized parts of the special teams unit that has a little bit more impactful meaning, right? Kick returner, punt returner, your gunners, your personal protector on the punt team, your long snapper, your placeholder. Like there's a few of them, guys, where you can definitely say every spot is important, but those spots in particular require a certain skill set to do them. So, can McWilliams actually make the team? He's a very versatile player inside and outside as a corner. He plays a lot larger than what his actual size is, his measurables. He is a fairly decent special teams player. But, on the other hand, Keely Ringo is a gunner, and we got to work that equation out here. JT Gray is also a guy who's played gunner in his career and has been pretty good, pretty well noted special teams player doing that role. He plays a lot larger than his size is, but at the end of the day, 5'10" is still 5'10". Under 30-inch arm reach is still under 30-inch arm reach. And these are a lot of, like, some guys beat it, some guys beat the rap, but it's very rare to see a guy beat both of those raps, being under 6 feet and under 30 inches in the arm reach trying to play outside a corner. I think then you're getting into even more rare territory as a guy who can make it in the league doing that. I'm not saying it's impossible, guys. I'm not saying that he won't prove everybody wrong about this. I'm just saying the numbers are a little tricky behind that when you look at the analytics behind players. So if Mac McWilliams is really going to take this fourth outside cornerback spot, the question isn't really about whether or not he's flashed enough. He has. This young man has impressed me with all the reports I'm hearing pouring in about how much he's flashed in camp. He has grown and developed over last season. To me, that's not really debatable. I think for me, the question really is about whether or not the Eagles can find trade value for a guy like Keely Ringo. Because the facts are is that Keely Ringo is a serviceable fourth corner on your defense, and he's an ace on the special teams unit. He's an incredibly good gunner across the league, and one would think that has value across the league. You're not going to get a fourth-round pick, what we drafted him as, but you probably will get another day 3 pick for Keely Ringo, I would think. I would think somebody would find, value in trying to actually, develop this young man into something more than just a fourth corner, but also knowing that the fallback is a damn good special teams player. The other question that I just don't have the answer to right now, right? The coaching staff and the front office is going to have to answer this for us is how much do they value length at the outside cornerback position? It's one thing to have one of those guys. You have a Mac McWilliams or you have a Jonathan Joseph. It's another thing if both of your outside corners meet those markers, guys of being, 5'10" guys that are, sub 30-inch in the arm reach, shorter guys that play bigger and are super versatile. That's something the coaching staff I still think has to answer. In my opinion, Mac McWilliams seems to have flashed a lot more during this camp than Tariq Castro-Fields. But Tariq Castro-Fields is still a taller and lengthier corner who has shown some ability to flash himself during this camp. And then there's Ambry Thomas, who himself is a sub-6 foot guy. He's just short of 6 feet, 5'11" in some quarters, guys. But he does have over 32-inch arm reach, so he is a young man that has some length to play outside as a corner. And in addition to that, he's a young man that early on in his career, and he's still fairly young, guys. This is not an older aging corner, but he did start some games for the San Francisco 49ers, so he has legitimate starters experience. So does Keely, to be fair. Keely did start a couple of games last year, if I'm not mistaken, too. So it's not like Keely has no experience, and it's not like Mac McWilliams has never lined up and taken a snap either in the pros. But I will say, Ambry Thomas is a little bit more experienced than Keely Ringo, and he's a little bit more experienced than Tariq Castro-Fields, and he's a little bit more experienced than a Mac McWilliams. If you're asking me for my assessment of this situation would be, he has probably crossed over the threshold of a 50-50 marker. I think somewhere between him and Keely Ringo and Ambry Thomas and Tariq Castro-Fields, there is a slim margin separating these guys. I don't know who is necessarily in the lead right now. But what I will say is that I think that right now Mac McWilliams, probably from what I've heard reported, is at the 51% threshold. Still a long window to go, guys. There's still a lot more play to happen. This can easily change in the next day or two. But right now, it feels like he has the slightest of advantages over some of these other people. If we're only talking about lining it up and playing it on the field. Special teams is a bitch when it comes to projecting things, guys. And that's going to be a difficult one when we talk about the back end of this roster when it comes to the defensive backfield in particular. Corners and safeties and nickels. All right, guys, I want to thank you all so much for tuning in. Thank you all so much for liking, commenting, and subscribing on these videos. It means the world to me that y'all are doing that. And if you guys want more content like this, if you guys want to see some more cool things, I'm going to throw you up a video up here, guys, that kind of goes over one of these player evaluations. Why don't we talk about Gush? Let's talk about Gushikin and talk about Kapuna Gushikin and kind of what we all saw coming out of the spring and how how successful he was at turning heads, and the fact that Vic knew his name. Like, if Vic knows your name, you kind of got to pay attention to that. It doesn't mean that you're going to make the roster, but you did something to make an impression, certainly. And then over here, guys, I'll throw you up another video that kind of goes over scheme or another player evaluation. Maybe we'll do that Ambry Thomas video here, so you got, back-to-back kind of, you can, make it a secondary day, guys, where you can watch us talk about the defensive backfield for today if you want. All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all so much, guys, but the baby's not going to be much quiet for much longer, so peace. I'm out of here.